Hi everybody, this is Madonna from Mad Beast Quilt and Sew, and I'm happy to see you. It's Monday and we're ready to get going on the next part of our quilt. Before I do that though, I want to turn real quickly here and show you the quilt hanging up on the wall. This is our months-long quilt that we're giving out free pattern pieces for, and then starting on the 19th of the month, Lucy will be doing a 4-part class. And I think that this is really a great class. This is not a beginner class. This is for people who've done a few quilts. I would say you're pretty skilled at rotary cutting. You're good at doing half square triangles, ready to move on to some other things. It's got some applique. It's got some faux flying geese in it. Some really tight piecing of the flowers that are on there. And this diamond block here is awesome. So it'd be a good thing to be able to try some new techniques for you. A little bit of applique, I think I said that. So that is a 4-part class with Lucy. We have fabrics available to do kits if you'd be interested, or you can choose your own fabrics. We'll have fabric requirements hopefully by the end of the week. So I hope you did sign up for that and enjoy that. I think it's a really pretty sample that we've come up with. So the next thing I want to talk about is I gave you a little bit of homework last week. And last week your challenge was to work on your rail fence block. And so I want to go into where we left off and then move forward a little bit from that. So how'd you do? Well, I sewed my strips out and I cut a 6.5-inch square. So what I first did was I cut a 6.5-inch square of basic fabric. And then I wanted to use this as my measurement guide to see how close my block is to my strips of fabric. So I'm going to put this right on top of there, and that way I can see. I am off by less than 1/8 of an inch here in my measurements. So that means that my seams are, they're so little. There's an 1/8 inch measurement, so I may be a 1/16 of an inch off. I can live with that. Okay, to me, I'm pretty pleased with that. So I'm going to cut 6.5-inch blocks. So again, I want to be very careful with how I cut. Anytime that I can use a smaller ruler, just like a smaller cut of fabric, I try to. This ruler here is actually an 8.5-inch square, and I have a love-hate relationship with 1/2-inch square rulers. I don't like this added piece. I feel much more comfortable using a traditional ruler, but the traditional ruler does not have the extra 1/2 inch on it, and I wanted to be able to show you with this. So I'm going to line up, and I'm going to check some things as I'm doing this, okay? I'm going to make sure that my markings on my ruler and my markings on my fabric are both straight. So I can see here it's straight, I can see through this edge it's straight, I can see we're a little bit shy right there, so I'm just going to make sure that I push it out just a little bit, keep it nice and clean, and I'm going to trim off that edge. I was going to grab a different rotary cutter and I forgot. Oh, I got the good one. Okay, so I trimmed up this edge, and now I'm going to measure over 6.5 inches, line up at the bottom, line up on my line here, line up in here, and I can see we're just a smidge bit off on this edge, so we're going to pull this up a little bit, and that could be pressing issues. So I'm just going to use my fingers and make sure that those look really nice there. So they're both going straight across and straight across. We're a little bit shy up here at the top, and we're going to go ahead and cut. So now I have a 6.5-inch block that should match up pretty gosh darn close to my 6.5-inch block here, and I'm quite happy with that. So we can see that little bit that I'm off there, but if I just press this a little bit more, I can get that to stretch out, or I can choose to cut my block down that little bit. So when we sew with a 1/4 inch seam. So I can see that this is off. I can absolutely see that I'm off by that little bit. So I can lessen that 1/4 inch seam. I don't want to keep trimming all of my blocks down to whatever size, because then I can start working out where I'm getting smaller and smaller. And if I trim this right now, I'm going to trim it off of one side, correct? Well, but that's not right then, because now that block is narrower that way than it is that way. So when I go to attach these two together, I'm going to ease that in that little bit. So see, I can just take this and just pop that, just that little bit. And look how I was able to ease that in. I mean, it is such a minute little amount that has to be eased. I do need to be careful though that I'm not pulling the seam apart. So I need to make sure that I'm just carefully. So this is a good opportunity to pin. Find the center, and pin. That way it's going to be absorbed on both sides, but it's such a little bit. So now we're going to go back over to the table here, and I want to talk about piecing a little bit. Can you come around on this side, Deanna? I'm sorry. So I've got a couple tools that I can use to also help me with my 1/4 of an inch. I've got a traditional 1/4 inch foot on the machine right now. This is a 5mm machine, which means that the opening on there is 5mm. So that is, to me, truly the ideal machine to sew on. I can still change the stitch plate to a straight stitch plate if I need to. If I feel like too many of my corners are being pulled into the bottom, then I would change the stitch plate. But on this 5mm, I have no issues with that. So I also could put on one of the other feet that are along with Bernina feet, okay? So let me go over the 37 foot, a couple features of it, okay? So most machines have a 1/4 inch foot. Doesn't matter which brand you have. Most of them have a couple markings on them. So this little marking here means that I'm a 1/4 of an inch before the needle. This marking here is I'm at the needle. This marking here is I'm a 1/4 of an inch behind the needle. I use those a lot. When I'm doing binding, I love this one that's behind because I know where I'm at and I know that I need to turn at that point. In here, this little metal edge here, that's 1/8 of an inch from the needle. So if I need to do something very small, I can measure, that's my needle, there's the 1/8, and then that's the rest of this width here, that little lip there, that's 1/8. So the rest of that then gives me the full 1/4 of an inch. So nice little measurements. On the back of this foot, there's actually a screw that goes in there. We have metal bars that can go into here. So if you wanted to sew something in rows, straight rows, you can put the bar in and then you can be able to track along your last set of stitches. So that's what that little screw on the back is for. The next foot that we have is the 57 foot. And again, most of the manufacturers have a foot very similar to this. This has a little guide on the side. And this little guide is actually on a spring, so it moves. So it'll go over your seams nicely for you. It has the same markings on it at the needle, before the needle, at the needle, behind the needle. But this little edge allows your fabric to go right up next to it. And it kind of bumps right into it, so it doesn't let it go any further than that. This is not my favorite foot. A lot of people like this, and when you're beginning, it's great. The more you sew, the more of a perfectionist you're going to become, and you'll start to notice that that actually can bump into it and it doesn't stop it, and you can't see your feed dog. I like to be able to see my feed dogs. So it's just a preference. Many, many, many people love this foot. I'm not saying it's wrong to use it. I personally just don't care for it. That's the 57. The next one that I have is the 97 foot. This one is actually designed for anyone who's using a 9mm width machine. So this here is for a 9mm. It has a lot more metal to the bottom of it, which is designed to hold your fabric nicer. Again, we have the before, the at, and the after. We have a little line on this one. That's our 1/8 of an inch. And this from this center here over is a 1/4 of an inch. In this box, we also have the screw so we can put the bar through it, but we do have another part in here. And this is actually an edge guide. This actually sits onto your machine and you can screw it in. And it comes with a little screwdriver. And you screw it in and you decide how far away you want your foot to be. So you can move this forward and backwards so that if you want it to be at a 1/2 inch mark, you can put your fabric right up to that 1/2 inch mark. You can use this for lots of things. When you're doing something heavier, like a polar fleece or something like that, where you can't really see your measurements anymore, you can put this on and butt your fabric right up to it. So it comes with the 97 foot. But you can purchase this by itself also. So if this is something that you're working on tote bags, say, and you've got a top that you want to be able to do, but you can't really see any of your markings, you can just screw this right on and away you go. It unscrews easy enough, and then just store it in the box with the 97. So if you didn't know what that was for, that's what that's for. That's the 97 foot. These 2 feet, the 97 and the 57 and the 37, I think, all come in a D also, which means that you're able to put down your differential, which is the little piece on the back on some of the machines that'll add more feed dogs for you. Especially on the 97, put that down. You're going to get much straighter piecing. So those are the couple feet that we have. So next I'm going to show you is a tool that has been around for many years. I'm trying to see if this one even has a year on it. Well, this one's been in the store since 2010. So this is a tool that's been around that is still used very much so today. It is a seam guide, perfect piecing seam guide. So this is designed to help you get to a perfect 1/4 inch. It has a little bitty hole in it, okay? And that hole is designed to be put up underneath your machine, and you put your needle right into it, okay? And now, whoops, spin it around the right way. And now from here, I can see where my 1/4 inch is. So there's my 1/4 inch. I can use one of the sewing tapes and mark my machine. These are awesome. These are by a company called, they're called Sewing Edge, and it is a peel and stick product that you can line up now to your 1/4 inch. And now you've got an edge to be able to put your fabric up to. So it's going to go right on there, and this is actually going to help you to get a straighter line to it. When I teach beginner classes or kids classes or things with lots of small pieces, this is a great way to be able to do it. I can put this on and take it off. I've seen it many times stuck to people's machines. You can cut it to the length you want it to be. You can put it on the other side if you're left-handed and you want to bump your fabric up against the opposite side. It's just a great tool to be able to do lots of different things with. So those are the 2 major tools that I really think are really nice to be able to get your perfect 1/4 inch with. Pull that out. I don't need to sew to it, but it really gives me a nice 1/4 inch. Okay, so we're going to piece a little bit here today. So on Bernina's and on many sewing machines, you'll have what's actually considered a piecing stitch. In the Bernina's, they're in the 1300 category. So you want to take a look at that category and see what stitches you've got. On those stitches, it's going to change your stitch length to a 2.0 and your tension to probably a 4. It might be just a smidge bit different on different models, but those 2 are about the best for you to do. If when you're piecing, you see that your pieces are going through the machine and they're kind of warping a little bit on you, you need to change your tension on it. It means that it's actually pulling it too tight, and because you're using 2 fine pieces of fabric, they're pretty thin, it's going to do that. So look at those and see. So a 2.0 or changing your tension, or both of those. So I went and grabbed a couple of books off the floor to be able to just make sure that I knew what I was talking about today. And I found a funny. So in Alex Anderson's book called Make Your First Quilt with Alex Anderson, she says, for stitching, set your stitch length on your machine just long enough so that your seam ripper slides nicely under the stitches. So how long is that? Okay. I think that's funny. There's no stitch length on here. Okay. It really doesn't give me any information. So I chose to grab a different book from Out on the Front, and it talked about your stitches also. This is, it's also with Alex. It's Harriet Hargrove. Sharon Craig and Liz Anilowski. And this one has some rules on 1/4 inch seams, but it also does give a little bit about tension. And it tells you about how to look for your tension and what to change. So this one's got some good reference. In the Start Quilting book, she does have a better wording for your stitches. And on it, it is saying that we want to be at about 10 to 12 stitches per inch, which 10 to 12 stitches, most of us don't measure, means about a 2.0 to a 2.2. 2.2 is about typical for piecing. I like a little bit tighter of a stitch because I like to know that it's going to stay together. We're never going to back tack when we're sewing our blocks together. So by having a little bit tighter of a stitch, that's going to help out. So, Deanna, can you hand me that little chunk of fabric right there? I want the little piece. Thank you. Okay, so many times when I am helping people with classes and piecing in class, I watch them get started and they don't do a couple things that I think are important. One, we want to watch machine position. So when we're looking at machine position, I think my nose needs to be even with the needle. I want to make sure that my foot control is right in front of me. I am really advocating and helping to advocate trying to learn to sew with your left foot. If you sew with your left foot, you're going to notice the first week it's going to make you crazy. After that, you'll get used to it and your body is going to actually feel nicer because we're not leaning into our right hip like we typically do. It will help you to sit up straighter. At my house, I am not right or left-handed. I have never learned to sew with one foot versus the other. So I keep mine situated right in the middle, and then that way, no matter which side I'm getting in and out of my chair, it's there ready to go. But I do have a tendency for myself to sit just slightly to the right of the needle. And that's because I mainly piece, and I use the outside edge of my foot as my guide. It is rare that I use the outside left-hand side. I mainly use the left-hand inside, and most of you are probably the same way. I want to, when my presser foot is down, I want to actually be able to see the feed dogs. And by sitting just a little bit to the right, I can see them. So I'm going to grab 2 pieces of fabric here. I cut a couple strips this morning, and I'm going to piece them together. When I piece them together, I do line them up. I do not pin. It's just my own personal thing for piecing. I find that it really puts things askew on me, and I don't like that. I am going to start off with a cheater. And one of the reasons I'm going to start with a cheater is I want to make sure that my stitch quality is good. I want to make sure that my threads are in the right position, that I don't have to worry about changing something up. So I'm going to put it in the center position. I'm going to look at my stitch length. I want to take it down to a 2. And now it's blinking right there. And then I'm going to stitch. So I'm going to stitch a few stitches. And then when I get to the end of this piece of fabric here, I'm going to stitch about 4 more stitches. I'm going to then grab my set of fabrics. And I have heard people say that they want theirs to just feed right in. I'm not sure where we've come up with that idea. Yes, it would be nice if it grabbed it perfectly even and it fed right in. If you have a knee lift, you can lift with your knee lift and just lift your foot a little bit and set it up and under. I always set mine up and under by lifting my foot a little bit. Then I'm going to go ahead, make sure I'm nice and neat. I'm going to look out here. I've got a 1/4 inch mark out here. No, I do not on this machine. I only have centimeters on here. So I can see that my 1/4 inch is right about there, or I can put on a strip and make sure I'm lined up with my 1/4 inch. And sew along this. What I did at the very beginning there. Now, the other thing is I'm not crazy holding on to this. Let the machine do its job. I'm going to just follow along here. My machine goes really straight. Your machine goes really straight. If it's not, you need something to have looked at. Your feed dogs are not feeding it through correctly. Okay, that's enough of me watching me sew. So you can see I've got a pretty small stitch here. And then I'm going to pull this out from underneath because we don't really need to sew the whole piece. So now I have this tail in between here. I have seen so many times where people cut this right at their fabric. I would really emphasize having you trim all the way back here in between. Okay, so about halfway through is where we're going to trim that. I'm going to use my new seam ripper. This is the coolest little thing. We will be having these to sell as soon as we can get them. It hooks right onto the tip of your finger, and you can hold it here. You can put it on your middle finger here. I mean, it really is designed so however you want to hold it, you can. I'm just going to go in here, and I'm actually going to go almost smack dab in the center of that and cut that. What that's done is it's left me a little tail there. And that one's just under 1/4 of an inch, but about 1/4 of an inch is awesome. When that's happening, when we're doing it like that, we're actually leaving ourselves with a little bit of fabric thread that's already been sewn, and it's twisted around each other. It's now locked that end for us, so as we're pressing it, that end isn't popping open and getting that V to it. And that's what we want to prevent, is all those V's happening to where all of our seams are. So today, your challenge is this. I would love to see, and I'd love to get a picture or two of you doing a little small rail fence quilt. Do a couple solid blocks, do a couple of straight blocks, so that way we can see your piecing going along with. Challenge yourself to be more perfect. You know better, you can do better, and we know a little bit more today. So, what else do I have to talk about today, Deanna? I think that was it. Next week, I'm going to go over some quilting and some quilting, and then maybe we'll start into binding. And then the last week, we'll talk about binding and finishing your quilt. So, it is Monday afternoon. Please tag this video, say hello. Please share it with a friend or two. We need more likes. Of course, we need more likes. We want to keep growing. I hope that you had a good little class with me today, and I will see you again next Monday. Bye now. Thank you.